I want to talk about a little bit about what I witnessed inside the federal court today, October 28th, 2008.
Anyways, I was screaming at the top of my lungs, "Don't kill me, don't shoot me, I'm unarmed, don't shoot me."
The trial, or not the trial, the sentencing of convicted Brown supporter Danny Riley. Of course, he wasn't so much convicted of being a Brown supporter as he was of some weapons and explosives charges and of allegedly trying to stop U.S. Marshals from arresting Ed Brown on his property. Riley came in, they started the trial about 20 minutes early, which was a point of contention for the folks in there who were observers, just people as opposed to people from the government. Basically, when you go into a trial like this, there's the people and there's a bunch of government folks, and there's not a lot of in between there, although in this case there's a little bit of exception. But the people who were there to kind of observe and were concerned about Danny's rights were upset by the fact that they had moved the sentencing from 11:30 a.m. to 11:10 p.m. 11:10 a.m. at the last minute. A lot of people ended up coming in late because of it. A lot of them said, well, it's not a public trial if you change the date and time at the last minute, or even if you just change the time at the last minute, especially if you make it earlier. I should probably rewind just a little bit as I explain some of this to you. In 2007, Plainfield, New Hampshire tax protesters Ed and Elaine Brown, an elderly rural New Hampshire couple, held the U.S. federal government at bay. They did this for about 8 months, and they said they would open fire on any U.S. government personnel that came on their property to try and take them away. They were people that refused to pay the income tax because they believe there is no law that says you have to pay. So once this sort of standoff began, people began trickling over to the Brown home in various numbers at various times. But there were probably 1,000 people that came and went from looking at some of the video over that 8-month period. Anyway, one of those was Danny Riley of New Jersey. A 9/11 truther, tax truther, sort of a guy that has a lot of unorthodox legal theories and other types of theories. And he was famous for this incident where he was out walking the Brown's dog during the standoff, whatever you want to call it, and was actually tased and fired upon by federal paramilitaries when he accidentally discovered them in the woods. I think for most of the period of time that this standoff went on, the Federals were not surrounding the house or anything like that. They may have had it under some surveillance or whatnot, but it was relatively unusual to run into any kind of federal personnel around the house, from what I understand. Well, anyway, the Browns, whatever their faults, whatever their unorthodox theories, received pretty excessive sentences. But the most excessive sentence of all was issued today, October 28th, against Danny Riley himself. And Danny was accused of, and I don't have the exact charges here. Well, we'll get to that in a minute here. It'll come up in its place with my notes. He was charged essentially with trying to create an explosive device and some other weapons-related charges. But anyway, he appeared, he walked into the courtroom. First the judge came in, and all the government personnel stood, and most of the people who were not government personnel stayed in their seats. Then Riley walked in, cuffed, dressed in brown, with a shirt reading Stratford County DOC. Some of the people at that point stood, the average citizens stood. I didn't stand for either Riley or the judge myself. I was probably the only one that didn't stand for either. Let's see what else. Riley immediately took an abrasive tone. He called the trial a fiction. I think it was the trial he was calling a fiction. Either he was calling the government a fiction or the trial a fiction, something along those lines. He tried to keep telling the judge he did not accept the man. There was a man designated to be his attorney. Riley kept saying, "I do not accept this man as my attorney." I guess he's like a federal appointed attorney. And then when the judge referred to him as a defendant, either the judge or the lawyer, Riley said, "I am not the defendant," or "I'm not a defendant." Then either the judge or the prosecutor began talking about minimum and maximum ranges of sentence. There's a very little range. The minimum sentence was around 438, I think, months. Maximum sentence, well, no, that's not accurate. The government was asking for, the prosecutor was asking for 457 months sentence for charges I'll get to in a little bit more detail here as I come across them in my notes. But Riley kept saying he was not a legal fiction, and he began making what you might call a straw man argument. It's a complex and unorthodox legal theory that carries no weight with the court and is hard for the average person also to understand. Riley said, quote, "You've been ordering me and enticing me into slavery," unquote. He said the judge should be sentenced to jail. He said, quote, "There is two Daniel Rileys," and he pointed out that one Daniel Riley is in capital letters and the other one is in lowercase letters, and he's not the one in capital letters, because I guess when you get government paperwork they almost always put your name in capital letters, so he's saying that's not him. Is this kind of thing true? Is there anything behind this? I have no idea. Apparently he believes this, but it's like I say, it's an argument that never carries much weight with either attorneys or the average public, and doesn't seem to have much effect on the government either. Riley said, quote, "I'm here under duress." He noted that he was shackled and that there were many armed men ready to pile upon him if they felt the need. He said the judge would owe him $50 million for something. I wasn't clear on what. He said he did not want to... Oh, no, that's something else. Hang on. He promised the judge some sort of envoice, like a bill. Of course, again, sounds a little unusual to me. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but it is... You know, sending someone an envoice is a lot less violent than locking Danny Riley up and sending taxpayers the bill. Few people watching Riley would have found his arguments to be very sympathetic or compelling, but it's very important to remember that Riley does not force any of us to pay for his activities. Every government person in that room does force us to pay for their activities. So it's hard for me to get angry at Riley when he is not intentionally taking any of my money by force. Oh, by the way, I should point out that a lot of what I'm telling you here, they gave Riley the opportunity to make a statement, and I'm just sort of telling you some highlights of his statement, which went on for maybe 15 minutes.